Imagine waking up tomorrow and suddenly nobody understands what you mean when you say, "It's the weekend." The concept of having 2 days off at the end of a 7-day cycle simply doesn't exist. Your coworkers look at you strangely when you mention Saturday plans. Your family is confused when you talk about Sunday dinner. The 7-day week itself is a human invention, albeit one so successful that it's now used by cultures across the globe. Think about that for a moment. We divided time into these neat 7-day packages, decided that 2 of those days should be for rest in many cultures, and then built entire societies around this arbitrary system. According to research, as of 2025, the 7-day week system is the most widely used time measurement across global cultures, demonstrating how thoroughly we've naturalized this human creation. I first glimpsed how deep this rabbit hole goes when I learned about the vast array of time measurement systems documented across human civilizations. From ancient Egyptian sundials to Chinese water clocks, from incense clocks to hourglasses, humans have invented countless ways to slice up and measure time, and each system shaped how its users experienced and understood reality itself. But time is just the beginning. What if I told you that money, the thing you work for, save, and spend, is also purely a social construction? According to developmental studies, children don't inherently understand the concept of monetary value. It takes years of social conditioning, typically until around age 7, for children to grasp this fundamentally made-up system that governs so much of our lives. What if everything you think is just natural or normal is actually something we collectively made up? What if the Matrix isn't a computer simulation, but rather a web of social constructions we've built around ourselves, so convincing that we've forgotten we're the architects? The implications are staggering. If we built these systems, these natural ways of organizing society, then we can also rebuild them. But first, we need to understand how deep this rabbit hole really goes. Let's start with something that seems completely natural and obvious: how we experience time. You might think that everyone experiences time the same way, in neat, predictable packages of seconds, minutes, hours, and weeks. But this seemingly natural order is actually a carefully constructed illusion. Consider the ancient Sumerians, who had perhaps the most dramatically different concept of time compared to our modern Western standards. They used a sexagesimal system, base 60, for counting time, which is actually why we still have 60 seconds in a minute and 60 minutes in an hour. But unlike us, they didn't track minutes or seconds. Their entire understanding of time was built around larger units and agricultural seasons, viewing time through the lens of natural cycles rather than mechanical precision. Studies of how people operate within different cultural frameworks of time reveal fascinating neurological differences. Research has shown that East Asian cultures tend to focus more on contextual elements and holistic processing, which influences their perception of time differently compared to Western cultures that emphasize focal objects and analytic processing. These aren't just philosophical differences. They show up in brain scans, with distinct neural networks activating differently based on cultural background. Studies have shown that Chinese culture, being primarily past-oriented, leads its people to perceive past times as being closer to the present compared to Westerners, who expect less change to occur in the future than they recall having occurred in the past. This isn't just an academic observation, It fundamentally shapes how people make decisions and view their place in the world. The crack in reality grows wider when we realize that even our cherished weekend, that sacred time of rest and leisure, is a relatively recent invention. The concept of a standardized weekend emerged during the Industrial Revolution, and it took labor movements and social reform to establish it as a norm. Before that, the idea of having 2 consecutive days off at the end of every 7-day cycle would have seemed as foreign as having no weekend seems to us now. What's particularly fascinating is how these different time concepts become naturalized. That is, how they come to feel completely normal and inevitable to the people living within them. According to sociological studies, while there isn't a universal time frame for a new social norm to become naturalized, significant changes in how we perceive fundamental concepts like time can occur within a single generation. This realization that something as basic as how we experience and organize time is largely constructed raises a provocative question. If we've been wrong about something as fundamental as time being natural, what else might we be wrong about? What other aspects of our reality that we take for granted might actually be carefully constructed illusions? Let's talk about money. Pull out your wallet and look at that piece of paper or plastic you call money. Now try to explain why it has value without referring to other people's beliefs about its value. It's harder than you might think. Anthropologists have documented a fascinating array of items that different cultures have used as currency throughout history. The island of Yap used massive limestone discs as money, some so large they couldn't be moved when ownership changed. Ancient China, Africa, and India used cowrie shells. Some societies used salt or grain. Each system worked because people collectively agreed it worked. The variety is staggering. According to anthropological research, societies have used everything from cattle and pigs to clay tokens and seashells as currency. Each system seemed completely natural and obvious to the people using it. Yet each was entirely constructed through collective agreement. Here's a revealing experiment. Try explaining to a young child why a piece of paper or plastic has value. Research shows that children don't inherently understand the concept of monetary value. It typically takes until around age 7 for children to grasp this fundamentally made-up system. That's because money isn't natural. It's something we have to be taught to understand and believe in. But here's where things get interesting. Just because money is socially constructed doesn't mean it isn't real. The effects of money are very real indeed. You can't pay your rent with the philosophical understanding that money is a social construction. This reveals a crucial insight about social constructions. They're real because we collectively make them real. Think about cryptocurrency, perhaps the most obvious example of purely socially constructed value in our time. It's quite literally numbers in computers, with no physical form at all. Yet because enough people believe these digital tokens have value, they do. The collective belief creates the reality. This pattern repeats across different cultures and times. Research into how children develop understanding of monetary value shows a fascinating progression. First, they see money as magical, then as a physical commodity, and finally as a social tool. This mirrors how societies themselves have evolved their understanding of currency, from physical commodities to increasingly abstract representations of value. But here's the mind-bending part. Every form of money, from gold to digital currencies, ultimately derives its value from the same source, our collective agreement that it has value. Even gold, often considered to have intrinsic value, is valuable largely because we agree it is. Its practical uses in industry don't account for its price. This revelation about money opens up even deeper questions. If something as fundamental to our daily lives as money is a social construction, what else might be? And more importantly, if we can collectively construct something as complex and powerful as the global financial system, what else might we be capable of constructing or reconstructing? In 1966, two sociologists named Peter Berger and Thomas Luckmann proposed a revolutionary idea. Reality as we know it is under constant construction, and we're all part of the construction crew, whether we realize it or not. They outlined 3 key moments in this construction process that happen continuously: externalization, objectification, and internalization. Let's make this concrete by looking at something we often think of as natural: gender roles. Anthropologists have documented an astounding variety of gender systems across different cultures. While Western society traditionally recognizes 2 genders, other cultures have recognized many more. The Diné Navajo society, for instance, traditionally has 5 distinct genders: Astzan, female in woman; Hastian, male in man; Nadle, hermaphrodite or gender fluid; Nadlihi, woman in man; and Dilba, man in woman. This diversity reveals how gender roles are constructed through Berger and Luckmann's 3 moments. First, externalization. Societies create ideas about gender through their practices, customs, and beliefs. Then, objectification. These ideas become things that exist independently of any individual: institutions, rules, and expectations about how people of different genders should behave. Finally, internalization. New generations grow up absorbing these ideas as natural and normal. But here's where it gets fascinating. These constructions can change when enough people recognize them as constructions. Between 2000 and 2025, the LGBTQ+ movement successfully challenged previously fixed ideas about gender and sexuality. The legalization of same-sex marriage across all 50 US states represents a dramatic shift in how society constructs the meaning of marriage and family. Think about your own beliefs about gender. How many of them did you consciously choose, and how many were simply absorbed from your cultural environment? Research shows that by age 7, many children have already internalized complex gender roles and expectations, not because these roles are natural or biological, but because they've absorbed them from their social environment. This revelation can be both liberating and unsettling. It's liberating because it means we're not bound by natural or inevitable social arrangements. We can change them. It's unsettling because it means questioning things we've taken for granted our entire lives. Consider how different cultures handle the transition between childhood and adulthood. Some societies have elaborate coming-of-age rituals, others mark the transition legally at a specific age, and still others view it as a gradual process. Each approach seems natural to those within that culture, but each is ultimately a social construction. The key insight here isn't just that these things are constructed, it's that we are both the architects and the inhabitants of our social reality. We create these structures through our collective actions and beliefs, and then these structures shape how we think and behave. It's a continuous cycle of creation and influence. Studies of people transitioning between cultures with different social realities reveal just how deep these constructions go. When exposed to fundamentally different social realities, a significant majority of people experience culture shock. a clear indication that what we consider normal is actually highly specific to our cultural context. This understanding gives us both responsibility and power. If we are the architects of social reality, then we have the ability, and perhaps the obligation, to think carefully about what kind of reality we're constructing. Are we building structures that serve all of humanity, or just a privileged few? Are we creating systems that foster well-being, or ones that create unnecessary suffering? Understanding that reality is socially constructed is like breaking through the fourth wall in a play. Suddenly you can see the stage machinery, the scripts we're all following, and most importantly, the possibility of writing new scripts. This isn't just philosophical musing. It's a powerful tool for real-world change. Consider the most successful social movements between 2000 and 2025. The Black Lives Matter movement fundamentally altered how society perceives and addresses racial injustice. The marriage equality movement transformed our understanding of family and marriage. The climate strike movement, led by young activists, challenged the notion that environmental concerns are secondary to economic growth. Each of these movements succeeded by first revealing that what seemed natural or unchangeable was actually a social construction that could be reconstructed. Research shows that this recognition can lead to both challenges and opportunities. Studies indicate that while the initial deconstruction of deeply held beliefs can be unsettling, it often leads to increased capacity for personal growth and social change through what researchers call reflexive deliberation. The ability to critically examine and reshape our taken for granted assumptions about the world. But here's what's truly fascinating. Some aspects of social reality show remarkable consistency across cultures, suggesting potential biological rather than purely social origins. Universal human experiences, like love for offspring, basic emotions, and the formation of social bonds, appear in every known society. The most flexible and adaptive societies are those that recognize the constructed nature of their social reality while maintaining enough stability to function. Take Costa Rica's successful transition from an agricultural economy to an ecotourism-based economy, or Bangladesh's adaptation to climate change through community-based flood control measures. This understanding comes with both responsibility and opportunity. If we are the architects of our social reality, we have the power to build better systems. But this requires careful consideration of what we're constructing. The evidence suggests that social constructs can change remarkably quickly when enough people recognize them as constructions and commit to changing them. While there isn't a universal time frame for how long it takes new social norms to become naturalized, studies indicate that significant changes can occur within a single generation. Consider this. You're not just a passive observer of reality. You're actively participating in its construction every day. Every time you accept or challenge a social norm, every time you teach a child what's normal or right, every time you engage with social institutions, you're participating in the ongoing construction of social reality. This knowledge is both a burden and a gift. The burden is that we can no longer pretend that harmful social constructions are just the way things are. The gift is that we now know we have the power to change them. We are not merely players on the stage of social reality. We are its playwrights, directors, and stagehands. The question is, what kind of reality will we choose to construct? As we close our exploration of social reality, let's engage with some challenging questions that may help you apply these insights to your own life and world. First, take a moment to look around you right now. Consider your daily routines, your beliefs about what's normal or natural, your assumptions about how the world works. What aspects of your reality might actually be social constructions that you've never questioned? Think about your schedule, your beliefs about success, your understanding of relationships, or even your concept of self. Second, how might recognizing the constructed nature of social reality help us address pressing problems in our world today? If poverty, inequality, or environmental destruction aren't natural, but are instead products of our collective creation, how might that change our approach to solving these challenges? Third, if you had the power to reconstruct one aspect of social reality, knowing that you'd need to convince others to participate in this reconstruction, what would you change and why? Remember that social constructions become real through collective agreement and participation. These aren't just rhetorical questions. They're invitations to participate more consciously in the ongoing construction of our shared reality. Because whether we acknowledge it or not, we're all architects of the social world. The only question is whether we'll build it intentionally or simply inherit the blueprints of the past.